Hey guys, welcome to another episode of All Bass Creations, Effects, Tutorials, Demos, and Review. Today we'll be going through basically how to use the Tonix One as an upgrade for your Zoom B6 or your Line 6 Helix or whatever you would like to use it that has an effects loop. As well, this would include things that have an effects loop and things that do not have an effects loop. So I'm gonna show you guys a couple ways you can just use it to pretty much as a $170 upgrade to your existing setup or multi-effects unit more specifically. And the reason why hold on. The reason why I want to do it with the multi effects units in specific, because it's like, some people are trying to downsize. They don't want to carry the big pedal boards and all that stuff anymore. So if you don't want to do that and you just want to get something like a Zoom B6 or a Line 6 Helix, the Zoom B6 costs a lot less. So you talking about, like, this is like almost like a mini Kemper, or when you add this Tonix One as the upgrade to the Zoom B6, or like that to the Boss GB 1B, I think it is, or something, whatever that is, for the Boss pedal, the multi effects unit, the head rush, or whatever multi effects unit you prefer. This same method will work for that as well. So don't worry about that. You heard that what you were listening to in the beginning was my bass dry. And before I forget, subscribe, like, and share. Definitely need you guys to follow me. Um, we'll be doing plenty more things like this, just the tips and tricks on how to upgrade your existing setting. And because ain't no point in getting a pedal. And a lot of times when you're seeing people show you pedals, they're showing them by themselves. They're not really showing you the real world applications of if you just have a multi effects unit or you have a pedal board and you want to use it. So there's a lot of different scenarios and things that you can kind of deep dive into each pedal and different scenarios you can use it in. So um, speaking of that, the Tone X1, of course, just came out not too long ago. It's a really amazing pedal. Um, and one thing I love about it is I now don't have to carry all my precious analog preamps out the house. I can just take this Tone X1. I can make models of those, and I did. And you're gonna hear one today where I did one of what they call a complex rig, which is a stomp box, or basically a couple of effects, the amp sound and the sound of a cabinet, but mic'd up with whatever mics you're using and whatever outboard gear you may throw in there. So the one you'll be hearing today is of it starts with a Gensler Magellan preamp going into a Neve 1073 mic preamp, and then that running into a Harkey TX 600 flat, like just for the tube saturation. So I use two different saturations on there. The 1073 preamp is not EQ'd at all. All the EQing came from the Magellan preamp, and then just use these two pedals to add additional saturation. And then I mic that up with a condenser mic and a kick mic, um, on a Fender Bassman Neo 115. And that's going to be the IR that you're about to. Well, it's not even the IR. It's a whole rig. It's a complex rig. It's more than just the IR. It's the IR with the head and the sound of the other two additional, effects on there as well. So let's hear a little bit of that. And so what I did, well, first of all, let's talk about how we got things set up real quick. I know we're gonna get back to the playing. I promise. Um, I got the ToneX running into the effects loop. So I have the send coming out of the back of. So first off, my bass is running into the input of the Zoom B6, right? And then from there, I have the send from the Zoom B6 running to the input of the ToneX One. and then from the output of the Tonix One, I have that running back into the return in the Zoom B6. So effectively allowing me to use it in the effects loop, and now I can place effects before or after it. Now, if you don't want to use an effects slot for this, we're going to get to that as well. You got two additional options if you don't want to use an effects slot because you want to use all. So Zoom B6 allows you 6 effects at a time. So if you want to use all 6 effects, you can't use one of those slots for an effects loop because then you only can use 5 effects at a time, additional effects, that takes one of the slots. So to get around that, we'll talk about a few things. But so right now we're gonna worry about 5 effects, right? But the ToneX is actually a multi-effects unit within itself also. So it already has, in addition to the amp model, the complex rig we were just talking about, we have an EQ. So we don't need to add an additional EQ there, um, you know, unless we want to. But you also have a global EQ on the Zoom B6. When you're running out of the main out, it is affected by this. It's affected by this EQ here. And you also have an additional volume knob there if you need to use that. That's the master volume. So we're going to go into the menu here. Let's go back. I press change, hit change effect. Bam. Hit back. And then we go to the menu here. And then we select a FX loop. And bam, we in business. Now we can mix our dry signal and the amp signal we have coming in here. So I'm gonna start with just what we have on the ToneX, and it also has an EQ. It also has a noise gate and a compressor and reverb. So those are all effects we don't have to add if we don't want to. But I understand you may not want to use the reverb right there because you might want to use a delay and reverb after it. So you can run the delay into it in this configuration, and then you'll just take advantage of the reverb. But we'll talk about all that. Let's go ahead and see what this sounds like real quick. So yeah, you got a whole rig there, just saturated up, plenty of booty on that. You can obviously, you know, bring that down if you look. You got it. I pretty much got it set for if I wanted to just play with my bass flat and not EQ at all, and just pull my mid knob, because just pulling my mid knob in and out changes the sound of my bass technically. So I got it pretty much set up for that type of situation. But this is actually the slap and pop setting I have on there. But as you can see, it's got plenty of highs and plenty of bottom, you know, and it sounds like an amp, right? Mic closely, because a lot of times you want to fill out that sound. So another way you can do that is you have a dry signal here. And what you can actually do is just, well, let's hit dry. Well, you heard the dry signal already. So let's do 70-30. So, you got that sound. Then let's do 70-30 the other way. So you also have the ability to mix it like that, you know. So I'm also using the compressor on here, so I don't have to use that as an additional slot. So one of the benefits of um, having a ToneX is it has those extra little features of the compressor, um, the noise gate, and the reverb. So taking advantage of that, we're not going to use the reverb, but just a little bit, just to make the amp sound like it's in the room. You know, of course, you can use it for extreme stuff as well if you wanted to just crank it up. And you can change what type of reverb in the actual ToneX software. And you have to just save it as a preset. So you got to do the capture, and then you got to go back, and if you want to tailor it and just have it as a sound a specific way every time you just turn it on, you got to have it under the preset. But I actually don't mind just editing, throwing the capture on the pedal and editing on the pedal. It's actually quite easy to dial in that way, you know. So it's very easy to edit, and you can use this little thing as an interface. If you don't have one, of course, if you have a Zoom B6 or one of these type of um, multi-effects unit, they're usually an audio interface as well. But say you wanted to use, something to go, you can use this with your phone as an audio interface as well, and do some recording, or you can use it with your You should be able to use it with your iPad and your iPhone as well. I know for sure that when I hooked it to, I have an Android phone, even though I have a MacBook Pro and an iPad. I know. I don't like everybody being on nobody or everybody time, but I like to have a little variety there. But um, the Android allows it to be an audio interface very easily. It even asks as soon as you plug it into it. So that's one of the extra bonuses of this too. It's not just a little box here. It's got EQ, it's got the amp models and whatever distortion and everything. You can add all that onto the patch at once. The distortion, the um, preamp, all that stuff, the actual amplifier, you can do all that type of stuff. You just know time bass or phase bass effects. So you can't just model a compressor. But some people have had varying mileage, using a compressor when you're using the speakers here. Like when you're doing it like through the mics, you're actually doing like one of the complex rigs and you're miking up the mics. I mean, you're miking up the cabinet. You can definitely do it there. But let's keep going. So let's turn this reverb off here. And since we already got a compressor running there, let's take this, move it over here, and we'll add a modulation. So we can choose something like a chorus. We got plenty of processing power. See that? We only use 3%. Well, maybe, I don't know if y'all can see that, but nah. But right now, we're only using about 3% of the actual processing power with the effects loop. So that gives us plenty of processing power to use for effects. So you can choose the higher power effects, or you can choose more effects, depending on what you're gonna go with. So we're gonna just go with this bass stereo chorus because that actually sounds pretty good. You can use that processing power somewhere else, like the pitch shifting. So let's add this bass and an octave, analog octave. All right, because we just with this you get to kind of just build you a little pedal board real quick. You know what I'm saying? Like with these two. So we got the analog um, octave down, which is a OC2 pretty much emulation. So we're gonna boost our mids and cut our lows on our bass, and that should give you get your live control there. So got that dimed out, and let's see what the chorus is set to. I like mine slow. Let's put that around there, and we can have it cut around. So it's only gonna affect frequencies above this low cut. So yeah, let's leave it at there. Definitely not leaving that there. So I like light chorus. Let's do like 15. So bam. So far we're getting our little pedal board set up here. That's three effect slots down, right? That gives us three more to work with. But let's hear what we got so far. And now you really don't even have to have your you can turn this effects loop on and off as well. See? And that'll just be those effects pedals. Or you can have it running through the ToneX amp models and compressor and all that stuff. So I do have the compressor on here. Let me see. This is what it sounds like without the compressor. With it. Without the chorus. Oh, yeah, of course you can mix in your dry signal there as well if you would like to keep that. But I like just the octave down if I'm going to use this type of effect, get really into the synth territory. And I actually prefer octave down and an octave up. But you got options. So because we just walking through building you a nice little basic setup. This is pretty much allowing you to have unlimited amp models. I mean, of course you got amp models and stuff in here as well, but they do eat up a lot of processing power. And you still can't, if you whatever amps you got at your house, if you want to throw those in there, you can do that, or you can go on ToneNet. You can grab some new different types of preamps or complete rigs, things like that. But taking these two is going to completely allow you to be ampless. So you ain't got to really, you know, I mean, you can go ampless with just the B6, but you can't. The amp models on the Tonix One, they sound way more realistic, feel more realistic. Even though the ones on the B6 are not bad at all, the ones on the B6 are comparable to all the other, the Helix and all that stuff. It's comparable, it's if not better. Then the bass amps in there are probably better actually than the B6, but um, they got they some of their amp models sound good too, but the B6 ones sound and feel really good. But the Tonix ones are spot on, like, and they just feel spot on. They respond the same when you add gain to them. They add the gain. They'll overdrive with you. They model all that stuff together, and it feels yes, you don't have the power of feeling like you're EQing the bass of the actual preamp like you do in the B6. Like they modeled a lot in there, but it's just something. The Tonix One just captures it right from the amp, and it's just something about that. I mean, I'm not sure what process they do to model these in the B6 or other units, but I know like the Kemper and all those allow you to do the same thing, but we talking about a $500 unit and a 150, 170, 80. Let's call it $180. So you talking about for 680, you'll be able to do everything that those units pretty much can do, with the exception of running like separate signal paths. Like so they allow you to run parallel signal paths, things like that. But they also cost twice. You could buy both of these, and then you still would need to buy another set of these to equal a Helix or a Kemper. You know what I'm saying? Like in terms of money wise, like this is literally half the cost and all the functionality of it that you would need on stage without having to fumble around with a whole bunch of stuff. You know, as you can see, you got your analog, you got your octaver there, and let's go ahead and add some drive. I personally like this blue overdrive here, blue B overdrive, and of course it's got a nice blend knob there. So there we go. And of course, you got a noise gate right on the Tonix One. So as you can hear, the noise gate is closing it up. But when I play, and I can turn it up even more. Okay. And we still got room for more, right? Let's go ahead and say this real quick in case anything happen. I ain't got to start all over, huh? So, bam, you got that, and of course you can swap this octaver out. If you want something that's like really spot on, I would go with the bass poly shift and just shift it down one octave and bring this tone down. All wet, no dry. She said. So you got plenty of options there. Just swapping out effects is going to give you a ton of range of stuff. You can not use an octaver at all and just use a synth pedal if you would like. And you, as you can see, just for a second, there's other octavers that use a little less processing power than the poly shift, the bass poly shift. So, and the bass analog octave. If you go with this bass mono pitch, that works too. But this bass octave, that works as well, but not as well as the other ones, of course. The main thing with the lower processing ones like that is with low processing stuff in general is that the low end is generally the problem. Low end and the extreme lows, sub lows, sub octave, frequencies, and these in the higher frequencies is usually where they usually somehow don't catch as big of a frequency range. So, but let's see, go to the special effects section. You got quite a few options with the bass synth pedals. Destruction. And if you want a really good chorus for synth, you would definitely want to check out this D tune here. So that's one option there as well. You know, or my favorite one, the Z Synth. This emulates an analog filter. As you can see, they got a good amount of parameters with these. Anything with a lot of parameters on here is definitely gonna use a bit of processing power, but it's generally worth it. So, that's also an option. And you wouldn't need, you can, if you, depending on what you're doing, you might not need that overdrive. You might need a synth instead. So that would be one slot you can free up there. Or, like I said, if you prefer to, that synth by itself is a synth by itself is fire. So you can literally not use those other two slots for that. You can use them for something else, like if you want to. But we're gonna use some of the little less um, power there. We'll go with something a little more practical, whatever. We'll use a D fretter. So we'll have a D fretter here if we need one. If we're playing a jazz gig, and if we happen to be playing a jazz gig or a rock gig, and we want that fretless sound, we'll have it. So, you know, you can definitely just build you a really practical board here. So, bam. And here's where you can make a quick decision. I personally, most of the time you're not going to really need a bunch of like delay and reverb. But if I want a little bit of reverb, I can just go with what's on the ToneX, like this, right? And that actually sounds fine. You can, like I said, you got different reverb settings in the ToneX software you can use. But so maybe we'll add. Let's see how much processing power we got here. We can choose to do a few things. We can choose to do something like add a pre 1073 to sweeten up the sound, bring the gain down, bring the master volume up, leave the rest flat. You might put it on 25, a little boost. Without it, with it. So you can choose to do something like that where you add that and you can have your overdrive running. and your D tune. You know, maybe even see if we got some room here. Nope. So something like that's gonna take up 2 slots. So if they're bigger, that's something else to look out for on the B6. If you see it's a bigger one, you already know it's gonna use more slots. But it'll tell you. But you got options here, so let's try to choose something a little smaller, and that'll give us, you know, you can go with either these um, classic bass, classic Sans amp sound. That'll bring you down to 18%, or the DI plus. You know, that'll bring you down compared to the 33% of the pre 73. For real, go back. Since we're gonna use 2 slots, we'll get rid of that, and we'll change this to this clear drive, which sounds amazing. Let's see what we got here. And that also gives us an additional control over the overdrive sound. So we don't have to have, we don't need, I don't want the booty there. We can have more clarity, more super highs with the presence. Got a nice blend here. Make sure we're not doing. Yep, here we go. So basically, you just kind of integrating it into your signal path here. You know, you don't even need, you can say you're not going to need a defretter. You can use, you know, that slot for another modulation. Let's say bass flanger there. So that gives you options with your synth. And let's bring this amp down. So we just switched to another preset of mine of the SGT, and this is just a regular SGT preamp by itself, no SGT circuit, but we got the clear drive running into it, into the bass vintage flanger, and then that's running into the ToneX, right? Um, and this, some of the other ways you can hook this up is just, if you don't want to use that effects loop at all, if you're not going to run something, um, if you don't want the flexibility of running it before or after stuff all the time, like, so you can have a setting where everything's running into it like this, or you can have a setting where everything is running after it, which is going to sound completely different. So, if you want that flexibility, you got to use the FX loop rather. Now, what you can do is if you have an additional way to split your sound, your mono sound coming from your bass in the stereo, for instance, a Zoom B3 or MS60B allows you to do it, or MS50G or something of that nature, or one of the other types of multi-effects units where you go into the unit and then there's a left and a right output, that you can use. You can split the sound straight to your ToneX and have it run straight into your return, and then you can just straight bypass and have a straight signal of the ToneX, but running into the pedal still, but just using the return. But you won't be able to run effects into it through there, but you'll be able to run effects after it. So it just depends, but it is also allow you to have a like a direct clean sound to your ToneX, splitting it up before it gets to the B6 and stuff. But running it this way allows you to, if I wanted to, I can divide this effects loop into a send and return, and then I can have the send go through certain effects and then have the dry signal as well. So I'll give you an example of that. Well, let me finish this out real quick. Make this quick. So since we're not using a reverb on there, we can come on here, add delays. We'll say we want that delay, and because you're using a big one, you can't necessarily, but we'll take this clear drive and go back to just a straight drive. It's going to use, well, see, even that's using 26. So you can get away with this. Yep, that gives us a lot more. Well, it's still not going to let me add it, even though we're not using all the processing power. That's one thing I would like for them to do. Like, I know it's called the Zoom B6, but if y'all can make an update and just allow us to use all the processing power, let us use all the joints till it's gone, like whether it's 6 effects or not. Like, because obviously if I got this on here like this and I'm at 60%, then I got more room. You know what I'm saying? Like, why can't we just use the whole processing power like we can with a smaller amount of effects? It's like if I use a smaller amount of heavy effects, then you can use the whole processing power. But if I should be able to use a bunch of low powered effects in the same manner, that don't use as much. But that's another story. So we running this. Let's get a drive, something that don't. See, they made sure all the drives sound sound really good, actually. See, what? Yeah, let's just use it. Let's go back to this dark drive here. still add a reverb. Boop. Not gonna let me do it. So they're gonna let me get away with it. Nope. So as you can see in this setup, got a little bit of dry coming through. So you still have flexibility with the loop, so you can turn the return off completely. So that would completely turn off the output coming from the ToneX, and just use your dry signal. Or you can use it by itself. So you got plenty of options there, as well as you could just use it straight up as a preamp and run it into an IR. One of my other favorite options. And running it like this allows you to go, if you run it separately with the return and the send. Well, I'm gonna show you guys a trick real quick after this, but we're gonna add this IR. Let's not just stick to my favorite today. We'll do a SVT 410s. Tweeter. I like to have it on this setting there. Somewhere it looks a little much. That's fine. There and there. And we're going to change this on here. We're going to change this to, I don't know, BA head with the SVT4 um, um, IR. So it's a 410s with a tweeter, mic'd up with a SM57 on the tweeter and a RE20 on the speaker, right? Well, let's peel back some of these layers so you can hear what that sounds like. So pretty much, we're gonna just use an IR from the B6 because I really do like the IRs on the B6. They're very good, and I like the loader as well. Like you can just drag and drop an IR into the software on the computer, and it'll put it in the pedal. Uh, but you also get a good amount of EQ like that. These lows and these highs, and then this balance with the inverted phase option as well. I love in particular. That's why I keep it. I'm actually only using 11% negative, in the inverted phase of an inverted phase cabinet. You know what I'm saying? The microphones, pretty much. It flips the phase of the microphones. So, and then you can assign these to knobs and different things like that. Let me see. We do that on here. It's other little cool thing you can do. Assign different things like that. So you got 4 switches there, and those are tied to the physical switches. So now I can turn them on, pressing the switch. I can turn the ToneX to different amps. If I keep the ToneX in browser mode, I can have this set up so I got different I can have different amps. So now I can just flip through them. And the one that's blinking is the channel we're currently on. So just keeping it in browser mode, you press Alt and you press the toggle switch here together, and it'll take you right to browser mode. You don't even need to hold it. And to exit out of browser mode, you need to do the same thing. So right now, we're on a BA Ampeg BA series head, and I know that because I guess you probably wonder how I know what amps and stuff it is, because it's just colors changing. I have mine set up so certain amp brands, because these are pretty much all my stuff, except for the last 3 on the list are ones I got off of the ToneNet, like pre amp models. Well, yeah, just the amp model um, of a Trainer, a Galleon Kruger, and a Mesa Boogie Prodigy amp. So I got those 3 at the end, and I know the order of them, so I don't have to remember that. I mean, I have to remember it, but I don't have to think about it. But so yellow is TC Electronic. Um, blue is the Gensler preamp, and purple is Ampeg stuff. And I just know the order I have it in. Like I have my 2 clean sounds, my BA, and then my SGT, and then the SGT B15, and then the SGT VST, in that order. So like I can literally just do that whenever. So right now we have queued up a BA series Ampeg head, and on the purple, and then TC Electronic on the yellow, and then on the blue we have a Gensler preamp in curve A, you know, um, as well. So here's with just the preamp, just the Tonix as a preamp. with the IR. And the cool thing is, if you want to change any stuff, if you want less highs, you just simply come up here, change it. So that gives you plenty of options for your heads and stuff. Then you can have a head where, like, I have my TC Electronics set up, one of them as with a lot of tube drive on it, so I don't even have to have an overdrive there. I can have the overdrive here. And let me see. If I wanted to, I can then let me see. Let me switch. Go go do, 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 do. I can even move this around and have it run into stuff. And remember what I was saying about with the ToneX? If you want to add more gain to it, in order to change the gain, you got to press Alt. Like, you got to get out of browser mode, go back to the regular stomp mode or the dual mode settings, and just press Alt, and it'd be blinking like this. And then you change the gain. And then when you want to bring the master volume down, because you just cranked up the gain, you bring that down, you press it again, and it'll be solid and like this, and then you just change that's the master volume. So as you can see, you got options there with a lot of stuff. So you can change, keep the gain there, or add an additional pedal there. With it in the effects loop, it effectively makes it able to either basically fit in within the digital effects chain in the B6, so I can just move it whenever I want to. without unplugging stuff in the middle of a show, during a show, if I needed to just create a patch real quick, but it does use an extra effect slot. So you got to, for whatever, I would just keep, for the sake of your sanity, I would figure out what I like more. You know, Another thing you can do is run it before the B6 and just run it as a preamp, like you would run a separate analog preamp before it, and then run it into, like we're doing now, running it into the IR. But you can have it if you got it wired before. Basically the output of the ToneX would be going into the input of the Zoom B6, and the input of your bass would be going into the ToneX. You can't really. It's harder to switch. You can switch it during the show, but it's going to be a lot more of a hassle. A lot more of a hassle. And on top of that, you can run it afterwards. Afterwards makes a lot of sense too. Because if you're using, depending on what you want to use as your audio interface, this or the B6, it just depends. But running afterwards makes sense because you can have a complete bass rig in there and have compression and everything at the end of your chain that way, and you don't use an extra effect slot. So, but you don't have the freedom to just move it around and have effects run before and after it if you wanted to in different patches. See, you wouldn't just be dependent on one patch. You would set this patch up to be a certain way and, do a certain for a certain scenario, and then you would set up another patch, and then you more than likely, hopefully, if you need a bunch of patches, you'll have it set up like this where you can actually press different patches and go, and do different things. See, that's why I saved it. See why I saved it? See, you can auto save with it. I just don't like it to auto save because I be playing with some of my other settings for videos, and I don't feel like resetting everything else. Sometimes you get it perfect, you know what I'm saying, and then you don't remember the exact numbers of everything because it's a bunch of parameters. But that's what saving is for. You can save it manually. Say I change something like that, you see that little signal. You just press that little signal that came up in the top, right there. This little, see, when I make a change, it pops up. That's the save button. But so you run it afterwards, and you just run it as a complete rig with the preamp and cabinets, or you can run it like this, where you got different amp models, or just the amp, just the amp model. Now I got different bam. And it's a good way to the volume match all your settings, is you can just flip through them like that. You can flip through 3 at a time, change one of them, and just be volume checking all the rest of them. Once you get those 3, volume check, just whatever one's blinking, just use that to volume check the rest of them. So there you go. So you got, now you got the Galley and Kruger, a Jens, and a Ampeg BA series head. Like you got, that's the 2001 RB, I believe. Galley and Kruger head, and the Gensler is the Magellan, which isn't even available on any unit. Like that's the thing. You can model whatever heads you have, like that BA 210 back, that BA 500 TC Electronic head. They don't even make anymore, and they're hard to find. So I just made a bunch of models of it. It's 30 pounds. I'm not trying to carry around a 30-pound head. Like, it's a lot. You're asking a lot. Like, so it just allows me to throw it in there and then bam, something I couldn't do with this pedal that, would have separated it vastly from the upper range of profilers and stuff. I now have a separate pedal that'll do that. It's not just an IR loader, it's a profiler. It does the whole thing, it does them separately. You can use them separately. I can use the cabinets and everything separately. I just have to, um, do things. If you want to use it as just the preamps, you can go and turn off all the cabinets globally. You can turn off all the IRs globally and just run it straight as a power into your power amp in or return of your amp. But with this, in this case, I can run it into the IRs that I like in the B6 because the B6 does have some really amazing IRs, and I can just take all these different amp models, heads that I've modeled, and use them with all of these IRs. And I got room to load more IRs in here than I do in here. So I don't have to use any of these slots or I can have these loaded up with preamps and I don't have to load them up with IRs too just to have them on there. I can literally do all that on the B6 and load up more IRs. So one additional IR I loaded, let me see, onto the B6 because you can add the Jensen collection. They allow you to do that. And is this JSC 15N1? Like, no, let me clear some space real quick. Delete. Add. Bam. Scooby Doo, and you get all these additional slots. Let me see how many slots they give you. They give you 120 slots, and how many are user slots? So from 37 to 120 is the all user slots. So because this is the user slot I'm selecting now. And so this is a Jensen 15 with a tweeter. And I can set it up how I normally would. That's the thing I love about this IR loader. It's like once you find your settings, you don't even, they pretty much work for all of them, which is awesome. And of course you got to make little adjustments. Like some cabinets have more bottom than others, so you might not add as much. And if I wanted to keep my dry signal coming through the ToneX more, I can also do that. I can also just simply go in the software and click on advanced set and click on the home button and change it there as well. And you got to click advanced settings and it'll be under there. But so you got a lot of options with it, and you still got plenty of room for four other effects there, on top of using it like that as a preamp, and this way you can also, like I said, have it set up to where it's like you're using the the return of the B6 like an additional parallel input, and you can use the return like the send out of the B6 like it's an additional output as well. So you can literally be running a whole separate signal path through the B6 and never, and having it all come, where you need it to go, which is awesome. Like you can literally have it still coming out of one output or the XLR, if you needed to, but you can run the main out and the send and both to the console, and then you got stereo. Yeah. And you still got effects, and you still didn't have it affect things that didn't want it to affect. Like I said, you can also change this to a return, and then you can add and send. So one way I have mine set up too to work is instead of having that send come back, I run two separate um, signals to the Tonix and the B6, but I'll have the output of the Tonix running into the B6 return, right? But the reason I won't have the send going in there, I have that send running to my amp, right? If I'm using a real amp. So I have the send going to the amp before everything like this. And then, you can have the dry signal go through, and the dry signal will go through the rest of the chain, the blue B, the bass stereo chorus, and it'll even go straight through this one, through the dry. And none of that will be affected by the effects, what's going on with the effects loop. And then all that will just go straight, pretty much that blue B and that stereo chorus. Your dry signal will just run through the blue B, the stereo chorus, and the IR if you have the send and the return dry knobs up, so you can hear them. So, and then have that send going to the bass amp before it goes through all this stuff, or like if you had IR, have it the send going before the IR goes. So if you wanted the send to have all these effects on it to go to your actual physical amp, then you can still do that as well. And then it would send it out there, and you would return there. But you can just do the FX loop if you want to do it like this. Like if you're not running nothing in between them, like that you don't, like say you wanted a limiter to go through here, through your dry signal, or a compressor to go through your dry signal, but not affect what's going through to your amp. You can do that, or whatever combination of things you want to do there, it allow you to do it. But That having those two separate adds a ton of flexibility to the rig, like a ton. So like when you have this return can come here. I would say you can do something like this where the dry signal, say you have another preamp running, right? Um, you can run this like two separate rigs. You can have another preamp. Like say I had my AG preamp, my Aguilar AG preamp. I can have that running, and that will go on the dry signal. So in the main input, the one that says one input one, to the B6, and then that will go straight through the Blue B, the bass stereo into the IR, and then straight into the main outs. And then I will have another return signal coming in additionally from the ToneX that will allow it to have, its own amp model on there where I can have like two separate bass rigs and I can mix them. So I can have like for instance, a 410 rig and a 115 rig, both, and I can choose the mix I want on them. And they're both, I can have a 410s on a B6 and a 115 on a Tonex and just mix them here with the return because I bypassed. I remember I bypassed the everything going on in the B6 to just come into the return with the Tonix. So yeah, that's a few things, guys. Just tips. You gotta experiment, with your routing as much as you do your effects, because that affects your order and your flexibility. Excuse me. If you want the most flexible setup, going into the effects loop is definitely that because, like I said, I was just controlling where the pedal was, not physically, but in the this well, this is the app that controls the B6. So I don't even have to touch the B6 or the Tonex. I can have them both on the floor and be switching rigs and never have to use my hands down on the actual pedals. The B6 stuff I can do all with my feet, and I can do it, of course, with the iPad, which you're looking at on the screen. Um, Especially if I don't have to edit. What I'm saying? Like if I can switch patches with my feet with the B6. That's very easy. But if editing, I can have my um, Tonex elevated with my iPad, and that gives me all the basically the control I would need over those two units, which is amazing because it's a lot of flexibility. I can have synth sound set up, rock sound set up, um, you know, um, gospel based stuff, fusion stuff, my jazz stuff, Latin, Afro Cuban music stuff. Any settings I need in my reggae settings. All that stuff. I can have it just set up and not have to have it worried about it. And once I go and I work it out live with a band, at a show or something, it's automatically saved on both of the units. So I don't have to worry about trying to recall things, or when you take your pedal board, sometimes you got to spend time just correcting the knobs that shifted while you were transporting it there. But with this, it just comes out the way it is, the way it was saved. So as long as you can, and if you don't want to accidentally bump anything on the Tonex, you can't keep it in browser mode. But if you take it out of browser mode, you can put it in safe mode, and you ain't even got to worry about bumping that with your foot or nothing like that, or changing anything you don't want to change until you take it out of safe mode. Safe mode pretty much doesn't allow you to change any of the knobs. You can turn it on and off, but you can't, or switch it in dual mode, but you can't edit anything because it won't allow you to. It just basically locks the parameters so you don't change things. But that's pretty much how you use these two units together in various ways. I definitely like I like the IRs on the B6 and the IR, the way you can manipulate them, and I love that EQ on the IR loader. So I definitely lean towards using those IRs, but I love the way I love the way the ToneX amp models sound. All the amp models sound amazing. I mean, all the rigs, the full rigs sound amazing too. And that's exactly what those rigs sound like coming through those mics. But at the same time, I like the way I like whatever they did with the IRs on the B6 already. So it just gives me a ton of variety of stuff, and I don't have to spend time modeling it. It takes a little bit of time to get those into that Tonix One. And like I said, if you're a bass player, you're gonna have to replace all them joints. So you're gonna need to go on ToneNet immediately and download new bass amps and change out all the presets that come on the pedal because you're not, they're not gonna be useful. They're all guitar settings. So definitely take your time with both units, and you can get plenty of sound with either one by themselves. But you put them together, and you got a monstrous pedal there. That's a monstrous combination right there that you can pretty much allows me not, I literally have presets, captures of all my preamps. Every preamp I have in this room, I have a capture of, or multiple of it. I'm, some as much as 5 or 6, 7 or 8 captions, depending on the settings or what I'm trying to capture from it, or how much of that variation I use with that particular head. Like that TC Electronic head, um, I don't take it anywhere, so I got a bunch of those because um, I wanted the full range of that. Plus you can't get it no more. In case anything ever happened to it, I got all the sounds I need out of it. And into the computer. It's not just saved on the pedal; it's in the computer. So you can save back up the B6 and the ToneX all within the computer, and not have to ever worry about if you're messing with your settings, or if you can get things back the way they were. It'll all be in the computer, and you can just import it in there and restore it basically to where you had it, or you can do factory reset as well. You can do all that stuff. But um, these two units play together very well. Um, the ToneX allows you not to have to use a slot for a compressor, an amp model, IR, a reverb, or a noise gate. So that's right off, or EQ. So that's 6 effects right off of the back. Right off of immediately that you can not have to use on the B6. That immediately opens you up to use a lot more of the effects module in there. The drives, the modulations, the synth pedals, the even extras. If you want to extra color your sound with a little bit of the saturation, like from that pre 1073, or if you got options, dog, and you run it in the effects loop, you just move stuff around. You can split it like that, have it come in and go out whenever. It just so many options together. I would definitely recommend them together, or a B24. You won't be able to use as many effects. This would be perfect, even more perfect with a I mean not more. You get less effects with the B24, but the Zoom B24 would allow you to, you know, basically split this up, like all your amp models, and it lets you get a lot more out of that. Put it like that. And don't forget, you still got stuff like the DI types here. Like, this first one is a Noble emulation. So you get a Noble emulation on the B6 as well. As well as you can download a Noble capture off of ToneNet, because I definitely have that too. I got a Noble one on there. I just don't have it on here at the moment. But at some point, I'm going to do a comparison between the two. But then you got a red DI on here. And I haven't figured out what this one is. But I think it's a color box. I think so. I'm not sure. And then you got a solid state. Two is that Neve active DI, just a little box joint. So you got that's definitely a Noble. You know what I'm saying? So, but they jammed a lot into both of these units. The B24 is just a smaller version of the B6. It's around 250. So you take that and or uh You can take a MS-60B Plus when they come out. That's gonna give you four effects. It's gonna give you IRs and all that stuff too, but it's just four effect slots, and you be able to split your sound. Right? You run into that, split your sound, and you can run the stereo effects out of there. That's gonna give you amazing options because then you can run synths out of there, and then on the B6, the side you run into the B6, you can run effects on that signal chain. The side you run into the ToneX, you can have that clean, or set up, for some dirt or something. I don't know, whatever you want. But those three options together. So what you looking at to see? It's 160, 180. You know what I'm saying? So that's going. That's 340. Um, 330, 340, somewhere around there. Depending on, with the taxes, it'd be somewhere around there. So I guess if you got that too and the Tonex, and the B24, which is like 250, yeah. You still coming out pretty cheap there. I mean, yeah, it's still coming out pretty cheap, and that's a lot of effects, yo. That's a lot of effects lines because I think the B24. I don't know if can you only do four effects on there. I think you might be able to do more than four effects on there, but I know you can't. It doesn't do as much as the B6. It's a smaller unit. So, but those three units together, that's an entire pedal board. You really don't need nothing else. You can swap. The say you want a variety of, you don't want just all zoom effects. You could say, I'm gonna get what is the Boss GT1B, I think it is. That's around that same price range. I doubt if I don't know if it's I'm not gonna say I doubt it. Zoom just did a really good job with these pedals, and people be hating on them. People be hating on. I don't know why, but the modulation section, I will say, like certain effects were better on the B3, but in terms of the amp models and the IRs and just the clarity of these effects, and the drives are better as well. Drives are definitely better. All the preamps are better. Um, the EQs are better too. Like we don't really talk about them too much. The EQs are better too, but yeah. So I'm not gonna get into too much more with this. I'm gonna let y'all go, man. But I definitely appreciate y'all hanging out with me. This has been another episode of All Bass Creations, Effects, Tutorials, Demos, and Review. I am the Bass Nagus. Find me at the Bass Nagus on all social media platforms, NEGUS, and All Bass Creations Bandcamp. You can find all my music as well as all streaming services. Subscribe, like, and share. Hit that super thanks and the Cash App. I would greatly appreciate it. And I'll catch you guys next time. Peace. Make sure y'all check out Fame too. FameMusic.org is a nonprofit that works with kids after school and summer in the summertime, summer programs, things like that. And they also help kids get scholarships and just exposure to different things, tutoring as well as mentorship. So check them out as well. And if you have any talented kids in the PG, in the Maryland area, because I know everybody doesn't know what that is. So if you know anybody in the Maryland, D.C. area, Virginia area that's a kid that's want to do music, and they can come and audition and we can help them out. I'm one of the teachers. I do not own it. I'm one of the teachers, but I support. But I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.